and I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. A man's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. And then you came along and you put me back together. Now every desire is now satisfied here in your love. And oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing, and nothing is better than you. Oh, now I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley. But there's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. No, there's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing, nothing is better than you. You turn mourning to dancing, far to the other side, knowing this was our salvation. Jesus, for our sake you died. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings.
Morning that you rose, all of heaven held its breath, till the stone was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death, and the
Dead
dead
rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all could come to the Father of his sword.
and the church
Of Christ was born, and the Spirit lit the flame, and this gospel truth of old shall not kneel, shall not fade. By his blood and in his name, in his freedom I am free. For the love of Jesus Christ, who has resurrected me. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise forever to the King of Kings.
Well, hey there again. My name is Becky. I get to lead mission kids around this place, and just so grateful we have this time together today. If this is your first time at mission or on the online service, welcome. So glad that you're here. Make sure to click the New Here button up in the menu or the link in the chat. We'd love to get a little bit of information and send you a free gift just to say thanks for checking out Mission today. So make sure you do that. For all of us, if you don't have the Mission app, seriously, for real, pull out your phone right now, get the Mission app. It is totally the best way to stay connected around this place and know what's happening and see the details of things coming up, or if I'm talking too fast and you miss something, all that information is there. There's also a prayer button in the app, so if there is anything in your world that we can be praying for with you, or just pray for you about, we would be so honored to do that. Our staff gathers every Tuesday morning, and we pray over all the requests that come in, so for real, if there's anything we can pray for you about, we would love to do that. So go ahead and fill that out in the chat, or it's on the app as well. Super exciting thing coming up that I personally really invested in, I'm super excited about, is a Mission Kids Retreat for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. It's coming up not this weekend, but next weekend. It's March 19th through 21st. It'll be Friday night, Saturday morning, and then Sunday afternoon. It's a 3-day experience just for 3rd through 5th graders with lots of fun and games and small groups and worship and time with God and just an opportunity to be together again after so long of being just like digital friends. So we are super excited about it. We've got all the plans coming together. We've got volunteers who are so excited to engage with those kids. So if you have a 3rd grader or 4th grader or a 5th grader, or you know one, figure out how to get them here next weekend. All of the details and the sign-up link are on missionventura.com/kids. The link is in the chat. We'd love to answer any questions you have and get your kids there. It's going to be such a blast. I'm so excited. Also coming up pretty quickly now is Easter, and so we are so excited to be offering 3 service times for Easter where we get to come together and just worship and celebrate. We're going to have baptisms. It's going to be really fun. And so it's April 4th. Service times are 9 a.m., 11 a.m., and 6 p.m. It'll be an outdoor service. So bring your chair, wear your mask, bring your family and your friends for this hope-filled hour-long experience to celebrate Easter. We're going to have baptisms that weekend as well, which will be really fun. And so parking lot opens 30 minutes before each service time, so make sure to get here. There's going to be a fun announcement that day about something Mission is going to be jumping into in our community, an initiative that'll help a lot of people. It's going to be so cool. So you'll get that announcement and be able to jump into that right away. And then Mission Kids is also offering kindergarten through 5th grade inside. And so we'll have the kids in the auditorium for that experience on Easter. It's going to be super fun. We're amped to have the kids inside finally. I'm so excited. And so that whole weekend is going to be so fun, so hope-filled, and have all our favorite things like photos and coffee and donuts and snacks and all of that stuff. So invite your people and get here on April 4th for Easter. Also, like I said, on Easter, we're going to have baptism celebrations. So baptism is a way for people to go public with their faith, to come in front of the church and just say that they are going to continue to follow God with their lives. It's showing that decision that they trust God and are choosing to follow Jesus. And so you don't have to have all your stuff figured out to get baptized. It's not a show that you're like, oh, I have all these things figured out in my life and I'm all squeaky clean. No, it is just a decision to follow Jesus and to show other people about that. So if you'd like to learn more information about baptism, we have a video at the link in the chat that has more about that. And you can sign up at that link as well for the April 4th baptism date. One thing we do around here every week is receive an offering. It's an opportunity for us to practice generosity together. So there are a couple ways you can do that. There's a number on the screen that you can text. There's a link in the chat. And then you can also just go to the website or the app, and that is there as well. It's just a way for us to be able to give back to the community and to God, and to just show that as much as we receive, we're able to pour out as well. And so it's so cool to see the way God uses that money and that generosity in our community in real, practical, tangible ways. Such an honor to be a part of. So you can get that information, like I said, in the chat or on the app. And another way we practice generosity around here is through this thing we call Item of the Month. So for a month, we choose an item that we all collect together and bring together. And so this month it is black JanSport backpacks. It's really specific, black JanSport ones, for a local organization called Forever Found. And they come into this space where foster care meets child trafficking, and try and keep kids out of those hard situations, those really terrible situations, and to rescue ones who have fallen into it. And so the backpacks will be filled with like hygiene products and clothes and other essentials, and then they will give those out to youth in foster care. A lot of these kids end up like throwing their stuff into black trash bags to move from house to house, and so these backpacks become a really meaningful thing for them. And so there's an Amazon link right in the chat. It's super, super easy. You just click the link, Amazon will send it right to Forever Found. It never even has to cross your home and get lost in the shuffle. So super easy to do that right at the Amazon link. Or if you'd rather bring it to Mission anytime during March, you can do that as well. Well, Mike Hickerson is here this morning. He's going to continue in the Didn't See That Coming series. Like I said in the intro, that we're going to be doing communion today. So we'll talk about more about what that is later. But if you want to grab something to eat and something to drink, we'll use that later in the service. We are so glad that you're here this morning. Welcome to Mission.
Well, what is up, Mission Church? My name is Mike Hickerson. Honored that Mission's a part of your weekend experience on the online environment, and I hope you being kind to each other, kind of greeting each other online, kind of saying where you're watching from. It's just honestly a privilege that we can gather this way. Our church exists to help people find and follow Jesus. There are so many safe people in the chat or want to help people take next steps. That's what we want. We exist to help. That's what we want to go after together, because we know that we are all imperfect. And so, if you want to even chat, I'm imperfect, amen. And don't say you are imperfect, because we all know that you are imperfect. We'll just say I'm imperfect. We'll go with that, because it's a good day to realize that there are no perfect people, but there's a really perfect God that rescues and saves. And that's what we have anchored our souls, our lives, our community, our faith, our church, this environment that we're going after together. We've anchored it in that fact that God rescues and saves. that he sent his son Jesus into the mess to rescue and save and restore us back to his sons and daughters. And that is great news. And it means there's hope for every single one of us, that there's not any of us that are too far gone, or not any of us are too far found, that we don't need the redeeming, rescuing, restoring hope that is offered through by God through Jesus. And so, man, it's just been a privilege of my life to be a part of this church and all that God is doing in and through it. And I'm just stoked to be a part of this church, and excited for our future, excited for the ways that we can have impact on our county and our community, on our worlds and our schools, on our teams. I'm excited for COVID to be like a footnote in history so that we can get back to whatever the new normal is. And I know that I'm not alone in all of that. And so I feel like some of that fog is lifting and ready to kind of take some steps forward together. I don't know if you've ever been surprised or like didn't see stuff coming. That's why the name of this series. But I don't know if you've ever like been shocked or just like totally caught off guard of news or anything that came your way. But it happened to me very early in life. So Jody and I, we got engaged and married when we were young. So I was from Oklahoma. She was from Kentucky. That's just the way it went. And I was smart because I was just trying to get her off the market as quick as possible. No, I'm kidding. So we fell in love and dated, and it was great. So I was 23. She was a month away from being 21 when we got married. So let me just show you a picture of what kids we were. Like, we were just kids. And I am rocking that shell necklace right there. I don't know if you know that. And that couch, I think everyone had that at some point in their life, in the wood paneling. So it's just a classic picture. But we got married. We were super young. I was a student pastor in Lexington, Kentucky, and I loved student ministry. I'm biased to student ministry. I had to take a demotion to take the lead pastor role at Mission. I'm kidding, kind of. But no, I love student ministry. And so we were on a senior trip where we kind of taken some of our core seniors away, and we were kind of investing them in kind of the last lap of their high school life and those kinds of things. So I went away for a couple days and came back, and I was telling Jody all about it, and I was so excited, and I was pumped up about everything that God did and what he was teaching me and all this kinds of stuff. And I'm not normally like super talkative because when I'm tired, but this was just one of those moments when I was like just telling her everything that was going on, and she had like, something was up, you know, how you can just tell. I'm like, what's going on? Like, what's going on with you? And she was like, then avoiding, like, no, I'm fine, which I know means you're not fine, right? So I'm like trying to figure out what's going on. And she's like, well, I've got some news. I'm like, well, great. What news do you have? I've been talking a lot. What news do you have? She's like, well, let me just go rent a movie and I'll come back and you'll chill out and we'll watch it and I'll tell you the news. I'm like, no, well, rent a movie. We used to have to go to a physical place, kids, and purchase either a VHS tape or a DVD if you were fancy, and then that's how you would watch a movie. There was none of this on-demand stuff. Anyway, I said, no, you're going to tell me now. And she, like, not aggressive. I was like, what's going on? And she said, I'm pregnant. And I'm like, well, we were going to wait 5 years. We've only been married a few months. How did this happen? Like, what in the world? And so, like, we were pregnant very, very early. In fact, Jody gave birth to our daughter Hayden on her 22nd birthday. They have the same birthday. So let me just show you how I was like caught way off guard. I did not see that coming. I was not prepared for any of this. I mean, it was crazy for me. It shocked me. Jody probably thought it would change some things in me, but no, I'm teasing. But let me just show you how young of a parent we were. This is Jody, 22-year-old Jody, at a summer camp for high school students that we were at the following summer after Hayden, 6-month-old Hayden, was born right there. This is a kid with a kid. Who let us do that? That is crazy. Now Hayden's 19 and in college. It's tripping me out. I mean, I don't regret a moment of it, but man, in the moment of hearing that news, I did not see that coming, because that is not the way that I thought it would work out. And that, in this series, is what, in a nutshell, what we're trying to do with the life of Jesus. We're taking 1 month, a little over a month, to spend in the last week of Jesus' life, because there are things that if you are following him, or if you're a part of that movement, like following him in that day, there's things that happen that you would not have seen coming, and it kind of freaks you out. Like Jody kicked us off last week with the fact that he is flipping over tables, like nice pacifist thinking Jesus, like everyone kind of writes him in this, he's a really good guy box, and all of a sudden he walks into the temple where people are taking advantage of people and they're putting God's name on it, and they're trying to keep people that are out in that are wanting to get in, they're keeping him out because of all these things that they're doing. He gets mad. He's flipping over tables of injustice all over the place, saying, no, that's not what my house is for. And then today we're going to walk through, they didn't see that coming, like where he washed his feet. Next week we're going to talk about his arrest and trial. Then we'll talk about his death. And then we'll celebrate on Easter on April 4th with the fact that there is an empty tomb. And all of these things, if you're following Jesus, if you're putting yourself in first century follower of Jesus, you would not have planned this out. This is not the way you would have saw it coming. So I'm excited. I'm excited for today because I think it's one of the most dear to me, most powerful things from the life of Jesus that has had an impact on me. And I want us to get us here first. When you watch Jesus, when you read about his life and his biographies of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, he is so compelling. But I just want to realize that everything that, I don't know if you know this, but Jesus, you have position and power. I have position and power. Or maybe if power is a 4-letter word for you, then maybe you could just frame it in influence. There is positions and places and influence that God has placed you around for a reason. And that means that you have some power and influence in your world. And we're going to watch what God does with power and influence through the life of Jesus. Maybe let me just scope it this way. If you are a coach, you have unbelievable influence and power over the teams that you coach and the culture that you create. If you are a teacher, you have unbelievable influence and power. God has uniquely placed you in that role. If you're a manager of people, God has uniquely placed you with influence and power over people. If you are a voter, you have power because you have power in your vote. If you are a boss, you have power over the people that are your employees. If you're a company owner, you have power. If you're a brother, you have power. If you're a sister, you have power. There's all kinds of power that God has placed in all of our hands in different ways. There's political power, some of us, birth order power. If you're 16 and you got a 9-year-old, you have power in that situation. If you're 13 and you have a 6-year-old brother or sister, you have power in that situation. There's marital power on all sides. There's family power. I've got a brother-in-law who is basically the godfather. If I have an idea, it's not good. If my brother-in-law has the idea, we're all doing it. If I'm ready to get up from the table, no one's following me. But if Derek gets up from the table, the meal is over. It's just, he has that influence and that power. There's organizational power that people have. There's positional power that people have. There's financial power that people have. And some of us know this. You know that you have more financial means than other people, and people treat you differently, or we expect to be treated differently because we have more financial power than other people. There's military power, there's civil power, there's social power. Teenagers, you are kings of social power right now. You have so much of this. All of us, God has uniquely allowed power to be in our hands. And Jesus is going to show us how God deals with power. And you won't see it coming. Why would God give all of us unique positions and influence and power over other people? Well, it sets up in this last week of Jesus' life where, the meal that is famous meal is this Passover meal. And so he's in this upper room with all those closest friends, and they're celebrating this Passover meal that Jody talked us through last week of even why the people were setting up stuff in the temple is because they were trying to prepare a sacrifice and an offering because it was like a Jewish festival that was going crazy. So Passover is a yearly event that is like the Super Bowl, where everyone is traveling to Jerusalem. Everyone is traveling. So there are millions and millions of people. Think pre-COVID, New Year's Eve in New York City. People are traveling from everywhere to celebrate this feast that reminds them that God has set them free and that God will rescue and save them. And the Romans who are occupying them at that time are okay, we got 1 million people that we occupy that are celebrating the fact that their God frees them. This is a tenuous situation at best. And so Jesus is going to show us this most extraordinary way in the upper room of how God deals with power. And John, one of the biographers of Jesus, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, who has, and even was one of the closest disciples to Jesus, he has this unique seat to be able to, a unique perspective to know what Jesus is feeling, what he's saying, and what he does in this upper room. And what Jesus knows that we're going to find out in this story, why it's dear to my heart, is that Jesus knows within 24 hours, he's going to be crucified. This journey of what he came to do on this earth is getting ready to come to fulfillment. And it's almost like he's got this moment with his boys in this upper room. It's maybe called the Last Supper. And he's going to say, man, I've got some things that I need to say before I leave. And I want to show you the most excellent way. And so this is where it's me in John 13, we'll spend most of our time. And it says this, it was just before the Passover festival. So that's like everybody's coming in Jerusalem. Jerusalem's buzzing, millions of people. Romans are a little nervous. I mean, it's going to be a huge party, feasts all over the place. So Jesus knew, so he knows what time it is. He knows why he came. He knows why he's here. He knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and to go to the Father. So he's preparing himself for that. I can even think having loved his own who were in the world, he showed them the full extent of his love. This is what he's getting ready to do. Go on to the next verse. It says, verse 3, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his, say it with me wherever you are, power. First little thing is, where does power come from no matter what position or influence you have? The Father put all things under whose power? Jesus. Jesus knew that. And that he had come from God and he is returning to God. So he's sitting there in this moment. Let's just sit in here for a second. Jesus knew that the time had come. Jesus knew that all things are under his power. And he also knew that he's got the celebration of God setting people free, and he's got his closest friends here, his closest followers here, and he knows that this is maybe the last moments that he's going to have to speak with them like this. And you know that it's guys having a meal that are best friends. So you know that there's food getting thrown everywhere. You know that they're making fun of each other. You know it's raucous. You know he's laughing. You know that they're telling jokes. They're talking trash to each other. But you know that Jesus probably has this somber thing a little bit more than normal because he knows. Like when you know something behind the scenes that's going to be heavy news or a heavy experience for people that you love and they don't know it yet, that's what Jesus is getting ready to do. So Jesus knows that all things are placed before him. And he knows that he has put all things under his power. So Jesus, in that moment, he knows that he is the most powerful person in the room because God has put all things under his power. So what do you do when you realize that you are the most powerful person in the room? Whatever rooms that you're in, and whatever positions that you have, and whatever influence God has put in front of you, what do you do when it dawns on you that you are the most powerful person in the room? Jesus knows that he is. He realizes that he is, not because of him, but because God has given him all this power. He's put all things under his power and his control. What do you do when you realize that you're the most powerful person in the room? What do you do, fathers, husbands, when you walk in and you know that your words can lift up? Or what do you do when you realize that you're the most powerful person in the room, wives and mothers? What do you do when you're in the conference room and you realize that all eyes are looking to you because you're the most powerful person in the room? Not because you're awesome, but because God has placed that influence and position under you. What do you do when you're in a team and you're the most powerful person on your team because you're the captain or you're leading the division or you're the VP of something? Or when you're a teacher and you got 25 sets of eyeballs, even some of them digitally now looking at you, and you're the most powerful person in that room, the power to speak life or the power to speak correction, the power to influence for a future. What do you do when it dawns on you? When you own the company, when you have a team to protect. If you're a teen, you can protect or wreck with the power that God has placed in you social media wise. What do you do when in the moment you realize that your words, because you're the most powerful person in the room, are going to have a massive impact? What do you do? Because Jesus knew exactly that the Father put all things, let's go back to it, he had put all things under his power, and then he had come from God and was returning to God. Because he knew this is amazing. Verse 4. So, because he knew I'm the most powerful person in the room, and he's not being arrogant about it. He's being honest about it because he knew that God had put all things under his power. So what does God do with power? What would God want us to learn to do with power? So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and he wrapped a towel around his waist. Let me stay here for just a second. Usually when you rent a room in this day, it would come with a waiter or a servant, and they would have cleaned everybody's feet. They would have figured out what to do. They would be the one preparing everything. So they knew, the guys knew that something was up. They knew what was getting ready to happen. They were a little worried about why nobody had been a servant. Where are the servants? Where are the waiters? They're supposed to take care of all this. And they knew when Jesus takes off his robe, because that's a symbol of his authority, and he puts on the servant towel, they knew what was getting ready to happen, and they're like, shoot. One of us should have probably already done that, but I was waiting on you because I think I'm more important than you are, so I thought you should have already done it, but Jesus is doing it. So this is what God does with power. Let's go to verse 5. Got up from the meal. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. I mean, think about it. They've seen Jesus do miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle. He's like the ones that's called them to follow him. They know that there is something supernatural about him. They believe and know that he is the Holy One of God. Everything that he's done, he is washing feet of these Palestinian dudes that have been tracking all over the world to get to this feast in Jerusalem. That was nasty. That was a nasty job. And Jesus takes it up. The one who created everything, the sun, the moon, the stars, the one that could play pool with the planets is sitting at the table, and he gets down to wash this guy's feet. The grand designer is now turned into a foot shiner. I mean, that is amazing. And it freaks them out. And he comes to Simon Peter, and I love Peter because he always puts his foot in his mouth. I love this. Who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Meaning like, dude. Like, you're not washing my feet. You're not going to wash I've seen you do miracle after miracle. Jesus, you are the most powerful person in this room. There's no way you should be washing feet. That's not what powerful people do. Like, you're the most important person in this room. That's not what important people do. You're the most important person in my life. I think you're the most important person in the world, and it kind of stripping me out. Why are you washing feet? And Jesus replied, you do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. Jesus going, Peter, dude, it is not about feet right now. Skip forward to verse 12. It says, when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned back to his place. And he said, do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. And the way I laugh because I read this and I'm like, yeah, you just washed our feet. Yeah, but then we know, because we're learning, when Jesus asks a question, it is usually not because he needs the information, it's because we need to process a little bit more about what the answer means and what the information is. But Jesus kind of answers it for them. Verse 13, you call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. You've got me in the proper place. You call me teacher and Lord. And verse 14, now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. They did not see any of this coming. This is not what important people do. But I have set for you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Jesus is going, now that I have laid aside my rank, my reputation, and my greatness for your sake, in this moment, you have no excuses to power up on people. You have no excuses not to be the servant of all. What excuse will I ever have? What do you do if you're the most important person in the room? What excuse will I ever have to power up on any room where I'm important? Because we follow after Jesus, we take the role of the towel, we take the role of the servant. Verse 16 says this, Jesus still saying, very truly I tell you that no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you remember them. You will be blessed if you assent to them. You will be blessed if you like that Jesus did them. You will be blessed. No. You will be blessed if you do them. So what do you do when it dawns on you that you're the most powerful person in the room? You shed your symbols of authority and you leverage your life to serve. And these guys, they get it. And from this moment, from the moment of what happens in that upper room to what happens at the cross to what happens on Easter Sunday, I mean, these guys become Jerusalem rock stars. They were the best friends of Jesus. I mean, they had a few moments where they were scattered and scared, but then they become the best friends of Jesus. And everyone wants time with the people that were the closest followers of Jesus. They want him to teach. They want him to preach. They want him to tell them about Jesus' life. And they do. They leverage all of that, but they never, from that moment forward, they never leverage 1 ounce of power that we can tell for themselves because they got the lesson of the upper room and the towel. That none of this, no servant is greater than the master. In fact, most of these guys that are in this upper room, they die martyr's death because they were following Jesus. If you want to be like Jesus, if we want to be like Jesus, then we look for opportunities to leverage our power for the benefit of others, and no one will see that coming. Just like if you were following Jesus and he's the most important person in the room, they never saw it coming. But we leverage our power for the sake of other people that need to be empowered. Man, if you're not a Christian, you are off the hook, and this is a cool story in history, and it makes Jesus more compelling. But if you are a follower of Jesus, we do not get to get off the hook for this. When I put myself at the center of power, when I put myself at the center of the room, when I put myself and I leverage all of that for me to protect me, I'm at the center and I use my power for me, I'm saying, Jesus, I am greater than you. Because I need it to be about me. And Jesus is like, no servant is greater than his master. Do what I've done. So what do we do? Real practically, what do we do when we realize that we're the most powerful person in the room? And whatever room or influence or position or power that you have, what we do is we know that all influence, all position, and all power is a few things. It's stewardship. That means it doesn't belong to you. God has given you the opportunity of this influence or this position or this power or wherever he's placed you, in any arena that he's placed you in, for just this moment of time. And what you do with it is a stewardship, because it's his power that he's given you to be able to leverage for other people. And how we steward that influence, that position, that power, that responsibility matters to Jesus. Second, it's temporary. Everyone who's had position, everyone who's had influence, everyone who's had power eventually doesn't anymore. At some point, you're going to die. And all the influence and all the position and all the power that God has temporarily let you steward from him will be in somebody else. Third is that it will be taken away. Fourth, we are accountable for the influence, the position, and the power, and how we leverage it for other people that God has given us. So what do we do when we realize that we're the most important person in the room? We got to understand that all influence, power, and position is stewardship. It's temporary. It will be taken away, and we are accountable for it. We also got to do what Jesus did, do what he did, and we got to shed our symbols of power and serve. I mean, don't make anybody kiss the ring. Whatever you need to do to shed. That robe was Jesus' symbol of authority. That was a symbol of being a rabbi. That was a symbol of somebody important. It was a very important gift. It was such an important gift that the Roman soldiers ended up gambling for it because it was so valuable. So it's probably given to him or passed down from him. He sheds that symbol of power and he takes up the symbol of a servant to serve everyone else in the room. Shedding the symbol is way different than abdicating responsibility, and it's way different than abandoning responsibility, and it's way different than escaping the responsibility that God has put you in. But shedding that symbol of authority or shedding that symbol of power is important if we're going to leverage it for other people. Third, what do we do when we realize that we're the most powerful person in the room? We don't protect it. We leverage it for others. I mean, some people think, isn't that what weak people do? No. Everything in my power, this is like the normal way that it would work. I'm going to use everything in my power to keep my power, with my power, to protect my power, with my power, because I can't have anybody threaten my power or position or influence. That's not the way of Jesus. The smartest thing we can do, the most spiritual thing that we can do, the most way that we can live and lead like Jesus, that people will not see coming, is that we leverage our power for the sake of others without. Again, can you just imagine if the church, if Christians were known for just this, known for just following what Jesus asked us to do in the upper room, that we know that God has given us unique positions and unique influence and unique roles and unique responsibilities, and wherever he's placed us, he's put all things under that power, and we leverage that, we shed those symbols of authority, and we take up symbols of servanthood. No one will see it coming, but no one will argue it. Can you imagine if the church was known for this? I don't know if I agree with everything they do, but they're so servant-oriented. They're so helpful. They never power up on people. They never wound people intentionally with power. They always take the road that is to bend the knee in a way of servanthood, in a way of surrender, to be able to, so that they leverage their power for the other people can win. It's always been the way. Can you imagine if the church was known for this? It'd be hard to argue with the church being a positive influence in our society. The fourth, when you realize that you're the most powerful person in the room, it's also helpful to remember that I need to agree with God about who I am. Yes, he shed his symbols, he shed his robe, and he went and served, and they didn't see that coming, but he also put the robe back on with humility and went back to the place that God called him to be. He said to them, "You've called me teacher and Lord," and that is right, because that is what I am. Jesus knew exactly who he was. And he didn't have to lead with power from it. He led with service from it, and I want us to do the same. There's just one other verse and a kind of interaction with Jesus that kind of helps crystallize this for me, and it's Matthew 20, and his guys were trying to figure out the pecking order thing, and they were fighting and infighting, and never happens on teams, I'm sure. But Jesus called them together, his followers, those disciples, and he says, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority and power over them." Yeah, you know how the world does power, right? You know how they do top-down leadership. You know how all this works, and all this stuff. And then Jesus is going, "Not so with you. We don't do power and position and authority the way the world does it if we're following Jesus. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant." This is even before the upper room. And go on to the next. "And whoever wants to be first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man," his description for himself, "just as Jesus did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many." You want to be great in the kingdom? Take up a towel. You want to have influence and authority? What do you do when you realize that you're the most important person in whatever room that God has placed you in? You shed your symbols of authority. You know that it is temporary. You know that it is a stewardship. You also want to leverage it for the other, and you want to realize who you are in Christ. And man, that would impact our world. Won't you pray with me? God, we needed this because when you just are reading this fresh of who Jesus is in the upper room, and you know that he knows what's going ready to happen in 24 hours, and you know that he knows who he is because of what you've given him, and as a son of yours and the miracle, and he could have just so much power and angels as his authority in an instant, and you realize, what would you do? What would I do if it was the most powerful person? And then you realize what he did and how he leveraged it. Thank you for being a God like that wins us over with love and doesn't make us bend the knee out of fear and power, but lifts our chin out of love and service and wins our heart that way. May we be those kind of people that when we are given influence and power and authority and position in any arena that we may have it, that we leverage it in service for others, because that's the way of you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So what we're going to do now is we're going to experience communion together. We do this from time to time. What's interesting is communion, the first communion experience, happens in the room we just left. It happens in the upper room after he washes their feet. And so what communion is on that Last Supper, that night in that upper room, Jesus kind of takes bread and breaks it and says, "Take and eat. This is my body broken for you. When you do this, remember me." I mean, he knows what's coming, right? And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And then he takes the wine and he says, "Okay, take and drink. This is my blood poured out for you. When you do this, remember me." And they didn't quite get what was going on in that moment, but in the next few days, as we're walking through this story and over the next few weeks, it became clear to them what this was about. The price that was paid for our rebellion, for our lives, for our souls to be reconnected with God was in the form of Jesus. And so Christians, for thousands of years, since that Last Supper moment, in that first Easter moment, have been celebrating communion when they gather around tables to be able to say, man, I remember what Jesus has done for us. I remember how he's rescued me. I remember what he did. I remember what he said. I remember things about him. And so we take bread and juice to celebrate that. There's nothing magical in the bread or the juice. It's just a way for us to remember. So in this next song, whatever elements that you've gathered, why don't we take communion together and remember.
Light of the world, you step down down into darkness. Open my eyes, let me see what beauty that made this heart adore you. Hope of a life spent with you. And here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. Oh, King of all days, oh so highly exalted, glorious in heaven above. Humbly you came to the earth you created, all for love's sake became poor. Here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. And here I am, yes, here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. And I'll never know how much it cost to see my sin upon that cross. No, I'll never know how much it cost to see my sin upon that cross. And I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. No, I'll never know just how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. Here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. And here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Oh yeah, you're wonderful. Yes, you're wonderful. You're wonderful to me. Yeah, wonderful. So wonderful, wonderful. Here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely. You're altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. Altogether, you're altogether lovely, altogether, altogether wonderful to me.
Such a powerful reminder of how God can work in and through us when we make that decision to lay down our influence and our power for the sake of others, for the good of others, for the benefit of others. So, such a good challenge for us this week. Well, don't forget, Easter is coming up April 4th. We got those 3 outdoor service times with all the fun that's going to happen that weekend. So invite everybody you know, friends, family, neighbors, everyone. It's going to be such a great weekend. So get them here to Mission. If you have any questions or looking for links about anything else that we mentioned today, just go over to the chat and ask the volunteers and staff there. They'd be happy to answer any questions you have or engage anything you might be wondering about. So use that space. We're just so honored that Mission was a part of your weekend experience. And we'll see you guys next week. Much love.